Good afternoon and welcome everybody to our last talk regarding the social dimension of the human person. It is my privilege to introduce Dr. Eva Olsson. Since 1996, Eva has been speaking about her life over 4,000 schools, churches, meeting halls, conferences, colleges, and universities, and over 1.5 million individuals throughout Canada. Eva received a honorary doctorate from Nipissing University in North Bay, Ontario in June 2005 and is a recipient of the Order of Ontario. In September 2008, Eva was made a honorary fellow of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada. In 2013, Eva received a Doctor of Humane Letters of the University of Lakehead. Her 5 times national best-selling book titled Unlocking the Doors, A Woman's Struggle Against Intolerance, was released in 2001. Her second book, Remembering Forever, A Journey of Darkness and Light, and a documentary film, Stronger Than Fire, the Eva Olsson story, was released in the fall of 2008. Her third book, which she co-authored with her son, Juan, is titled Every Step of the Way. It is also a national bestseller. Eva shares her personal story of horror as a prisoner of the Holocaust, followed by her journey to freedom, and the life lessons that history has given her out of all these experiences. Today, we have the honor of having Eva with us, sharing the talk, Eliminating Hate, the Road to Peace. You can leave your questions in the comment section of the Facebook Live. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Eva.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here because 76 years ago, I was not that privileged. When we were taken away, you have the PowerPoint, so I'm gonna put mine on. Hold on a minute. Here is my son, Juan. Okay, we're gonna see the PowerPoint.
Go ahead.
India, and Hitler, actually he was Austrian, not German, but he was the Chancellor of Germany. So what does it mean to be a good leader? Good leader helps other people. A poor leader is a bully that hurts other people. So I'm going to share with you. Okay, what Hitler did. Children of age 10, boys first, were taken away from their families without permission. If mom or dad said no, they were killed. They were put in boot camps. They were brainwashed how to brutalize other people. Girls at age 10 were also taken away. So how did that affect us? He promised his people, if he kills the Jewish people, I am Jewish, every German will drive a Volkswagen, a car. If he kills us, every German will have a job. But he couldn't deliver. That's not what he did. hate overpowered. Now, how did that affect us? I'm Hungarian. I have a family, brothers and sisters. There were 6 children in my family. Hungary during World War II. That circle, what you see, is where I was born. October 1924. We knew there was a war going on because Poland was occupied in 1939, and we were still safe, but not for long. Sătumare was the city called in Romanian, because also it has a Hungarian name, Satmar, the ghetto of 1944. So what does the ghetto mean? There were 13,000 Jewish people living in the city I was born. 11,000 were forced in from the villages. 24,000 Jewish people were locked up in 6 blocks. I lived in that area right there because my family didn't have money to buy a house. They were poor. So we rented 2 rooms. And we had to help other people to come in to stay with us. 5 children, a mother and a father. So there were 17 people living in 2 rooms, sleeping on the floor. We didn't have enough beds. We had 1 wooden toilet outside. 3 of my siblings, 2 sisters and 1 brother was already married, and they had children. I had 5 little nieces, a 3.5-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, 6 months, and a 2-month-old baby. And that's why 25 years ago, I made up my mind. I'm going to speak for all children because they cannot speak for themselves. Hate that silence their voices. They cannot speak for themselves. Somebody has to. 1.5 million children were murdered. 1.5 million. From infancy babies until children 15 or 16 years of age. 5 of those children, as I said, were from my family. They were hated. When I speak in a school, which I have done many times, people ask me, how come you don't hate for what they did to you? I don't hate because I don't want to be sick. Hate is a sickness. I don't want to be sick. If I am sick, that the people that hurt us, hated us, they win. The family were all together, but not for long. May the 15th, we were ordered to go outside and line up 5 in a row. They told us we are going to Germany to work in a brick factory. They forced us into those boxcars. 4 days and nights standing in a boxcar, standing. one pail of water for drinking for 100 people. And the other pail was to be used as a toilet. 4 days and nights. The elderly died, many of them, because there wasn't enough air. May the 15th, we arrived at destination, except it wasn't Germany. Hungarian Jews. I am a Hungarian Jew. We arrived in Auschwitz-Birkenau. As we got out of the boxcar, some people had a sigh of relief. Now we are going to have water and fresh air. There wasn't any. Black smoke coming out of 5 chimneys. And the guards were yelling, "You're gonna have a shower? When you come out, you're gonna have water." They ordered us to line up. All the men, my brothers, my father, my 2 brother-in-laws, I never saw them again, never. And we're marching towards the gate where the angel of death was standing. Joseph Mengele. He was the one who decided who will live or who shall die. My younger sister, Ilona, was beside me. A big girl, not quite 17. Another healthy-looking young females went to the right. All other people to the left. I turned my head to the left. I wanted to see where my mom was. In seconds, we were separated. They didn't tell us why. My mom, her name was Helena. She used to make us beautiful dresses. Before she was married, she had 11 girls working for her. That's what she did. She was sewing dresses. And when I turned my head and I didn't see her, sadness had never left me. I'm still very sad. She was 48. And I didn't know then that I will never see her again. And I didn't know where she was sent. She had my older sister Sarah's 3 little girls with her. 2 days later, I found out from some other prisoners that I would never see my mom again. Never. My dad, he was sent to the right to be a slave laborer to work. My father was a teacher. He was teaching Hebrew college. He wrote many books. He was a very educated man. So where did he end up? Buchenwald. That was a concentration camp in Germany. And my dad only lived 6 months. He died of starvation, no food and no water. How did I find out? While I still lived in Europe, a young man, excuse me, that was beside him when he died, he used to live on the same street in Hungary where we lived. And he came to see me when I lived in Sweden. He told me that my dad died December the 9th, 1944, the same month. He was born in December. He would have been 49. $10 million, 11 actually, 11 million people died. Why did they die? Because they were haters. 6 million were Jewish, 5 million were not. Many Christians, Catholic, all kinds of religion. If the Nazis didn't like them, they killed them. These were the old people with children that were sent to the left. That's where they were waiting to be taken into the gas chamber. Little children. Did they know why? Did they know what it means to be hated? No. Another grandmother walking with her 3 grandchildren, just like my mom did. She doesn't realize she's walking toward the gas chamber. In 2007, I returned to retrace my journey with a filmmaker from Toronto, his wife, and an English teacher from where I live, from our high school. We went into the gas chamber. We saw the shower heads from where water was supposed to come out, but it wasn't water. It was a powder called Zyklon B. It comes through the shower heads, settles on the floor, and forms a gas. When they unlocked the doors after 20 minutes, they found the children died first because they were the shortest, closest to the floor. You cannot imagine how many times I asked myself that question. Who could do this? Animals? No. An animal will kill when it's hungry or threatened. We need to ask ourselves, who were they? What happens to hate if it's not checked? It turns into rage. Rage that gave them the power to commit genocide. And that's why when I speak in the schools, I do a Zoom now because I can't travel, I make sure that I talk about hate must be eliminated. It's not some kind of a joke. It's a killer. It takes a lot less energy to be kind to somebody than to hate. Hate should never be allowed through your mouth. Never. These young female prisoners have been there already in Auschwitz for 2 years since 1942, from Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Poland. When they took us there in 1944, we weren't allowed to keep our shoes, our socks, our underwear, nothing. Just they gave us that prison dress after we were shaved. They took us to the Hungarian women's camp, and we're lining up for our daily ration, 1 piece of bread, 70% sawdust. For those that don't know, maybe in your language, sawdust is different. When you cut down a tree or a piece of wood, the particle that falls down, it's called sawdust. They took a lot of sawdust, a little bit of flour and water, and they made bread out of it. And that's what they had to eat. You had a choice. If you wanted to live, you ate it. Soup was like dirty water. And why was it dirty? It was made out of the peeling of the potatoes that were not washed. 4:30 in the morning, every morning, we had to go outside. It didn't matter what the weather was like. You had to stand for 2 hours. One day they told us to go outside in the afternoon. We didn't know why, but we found out. We were supposed to be tattooed a number on the arm, which meant you are being dehumanized. You're not a human, you're just a number. Well, I don't have one, and therefore, thank God, I'm still a human. What happened? Before they started, half a dozen German civilian businessmen came. They needed workers. So 2,000 young female prisoners, just like the ones you see on the screen, were taken away for slave labor. The first place, they dumped us in a soccer field. We slept on the ground, underneath pop tents. They marched us down to the river where freight ships used to come in, and we had to unload bricks, pile them up high along the banks. 4 or 5 weeks, about a month and a half later, 520 girls were taken from there. My sister and I were among them. Here is where we showed up. The capital of the Rhine, a city called Essen. We worked in that big factory, but now the bombs hit it. The good guys were bombing daytime and nighttime, all the time. And they put us in a camp near a coal mine. Every morning early, we marched to work. In the evening, when it got dark, we marched back to the camp. And now it's October 1944. We got back to the camp, but we had a big surprise. There were no more buildings. All the barracks were made out of wood. They burned to the ground. We were scared. We didn't know where we were going to sleep. They put us in a hole in the ground. What kind of hole? A dark hole. A hole that was there underneath the kitchen. The kitchen burned down, but it had a cement floor. At some point, dirt was taken out and there was some straw down there. In the olden days, you used to have a root cellar where they put your potatoes and cabbage. Maybe that's what they did. But now we had to sleep there for 4 months. No light, totally dark, on straw. We had no water. We had no toilet paper. We are into January 1945. There is snow on the ground. And we're still marching to work in wooden clogs because we had no shoes or socks or underwear. We were dirty and we were wet. In the factory, in that factory, we were told by some of the German civilians. I wrote about 4 of them. They were very kind. They heard that they're going to take us away. Because the Russian forces were coming closer. And they did. The final journey. Bergen-Belsen, where Anne Frank and her sister Margot died. The barrack my sister and I ended up in and some other new prisoners. That barrack, there was no chair, there was no bunk. All prisoners were on the floor. Very, very sick. They had a tummy infection from drinking dirty water. They were covered with lice, lying on the floor. They were too sick to go outside. They were covered with lice and diarrhea. Bergen-Belsen was built to hold 5,000 soldiers, and they put 60,000 prisoners of us in there. Every day, approximately 500 died. Every day. 6 days before we were liberated, the Gestapo had given orders, 0 supply. So what does that mean, 0? Nothing. What did we have to eat there? Almost nothing. No sawdust bread, just that dirty water soup. Now they took it away. They wanted us to die quicker because they knew that the good guys were not far from the camp. They didn't want us to live. I was burning up with fever. My sister was lying beside me. And I kept saying, I cannot die here. Who is going to look after my sister? I'm older than her, so I'm responsible for her. That's how it used to be in the olden days. The older ones look after the younger ones in a lot of families. So I couldn't die. They took everything away that they could. They stripped us of human rights, human dignity. They murdered our families. The one thing they couldn't take away, they had to kill you to get rid of, is the spirit, the strength of your spirit, and never ever to give up hope, never, never. Had I given up because I was very, very ill with a high fever, at home when we had a fever, my mom would wet a towel, put it on her head or on her chest to bring the fever down. What do you do if you have no water? We didn't. I urinated on a rag, put it on my head to bring the fever down. What I learned in Bergen-Belsen, the body will not give up something we don't put in. Water. Something we take for granted. I don't. I tried to survive for 6 days without it. April 15th. Yesterday was that day. April 15th, 1945, 11 o'clock in the morning. We were liberated. Small miracles out of the ashes. Why? We were supposed to be killed 3 o'clock that afternoon. They hated us so much that they knew that the Allies were not far away from the camp and they didn't want us to live. But they came in 11 o'clock in the morning. The British and Canadians that were in Holland. I remember a soldier, there were many of them that come into all the barracks. This one, particular one, bent down where I was lying on the barrack floor. He put a red cross on my forehead. I didn't know why. He only went to those that came there towards the end because we were not that badly skeletoned. There was an indicator to the ambulance drivers, which were British ladies. Those were the ones to be taken away first. They took us to a tent to be disinfected. They converted the building outside Bergen boundaries, made it into a hospital. And that's where we were treated. Typhoid fever. I've never heard of typhus, but now I have it. In the hospital for 2 months. My sister also got sick. The Red Cross arrived from Sweden. To give us some advice. You can go back to the country where you were born. I didn't want to go there. Or you go to Switzerland or Sweden. I made the choice for my sister as well. And through the Red Cross, we went to Sweden. They provided for us transportation, clothes, food. All the needs were looked after by the Red Cross. And then the Swedish people were just unbelievable kind. and caring. They didn't care about religion or culture. They treated us as their brothers and sisters. So the way I look at the Red Cross, what they did, they took us out of hell and into heaven. That's what it felt like. There are people there, real people, people that care. We couldn't believe it. They provided everything for us that we needed till we were, at least for 3 months, they were well enough that we can go and work. In October of 1945, I met a young Swede. He wanted to date me. We spoke German to each other. I spoke a little bit, understood, and he learned that in school. And I told that young Swede, you must date a Swedish girl because I am different. Here is what I learned from him. He said, it's okay to be different. What's not okay, it's when we are indifferent. That's not okay. I did not fall in love with him. I took my time to build love on his character, on his compassion, and care for another human being. Unconditional acceptance like I had never known before. And his actions led to the altar. Finding freedom in Sweden after liberation, the power of accepting individual differences. What you see in the bottom there is my sister, Ilona. Next month will be 4 years that she passed away before she was 90. And they were sad. That's her grandchildren. How do we get rid of hate? By thinking, if I don't want to be hated, I should not hate either. Never. It takes a lot less energy to be kind and acceptance. Like that young Swede, but the Swedes were just all Swedish people. They took in a lot of refugees, more than many other countries, because they were caring. And that's what it's about. A person that cares for others and accepts them, they will never have hate in their heart, never. And that's what we must teach our children. Where does the child learn this? I tell you, I have about 16,000 letters from students and educators. I keep all of them because in one particular one, a 12-year-old boy, he wrote to me and he said this, you tell us to eliminate hate. Well, my mom always yells, she said, I hate this or she hates that. We have a responsibility to our children. We need to send them to school the way we want to see them as adults, because the teacher can't fix it. It's our responsibilities. Children breathe the air that we provide for them. They take with them what they hear. Sometimes perception is not always like reality, the way they interpret things. And that's why we need to be so very careful how we do things. Before I show you a couple of other slides, I want to mention something about the Spanish Inquisition. You probably know it. Queen Isabella, 1492. I'm not saying that she hated the Jewish people, but she requested that they accept Christianity, turn into Christians, from Judaism to Christianity. They didn't want to do it. She didn't hate them, but she expelled them. She made them leave the country. Whichever countries accepted some of them, some Poland, Hungary, Germany, all over. But what I found out a few years ago, that 400 of those descendants live in Mexico. 400. When I was in the United Nations, as I mentioned earlier, I met somebody, and that lady from Mexico, she told me about the history. She didn't hate them. She just told them, you have to leave the country. Her attitude was my way or the highway. He didn't go as far as Hitler did. Hitler killed them. For myself personally, I cannot change the past. Nobody has that power. For 50 years, I didn't speak because I was scared. Scared of those that hated still the Jewish people, scared of those that were bullies. But being silent for 50 years, it didn't help me to heal. My nightmares were very bad. But the last 25 years, I do not have them because I speak about it and I bring it out. And that's healing. So what can you do? Never use the word hate. Celebrate differences. Be different and don't accept discrimination, bullying towards others. We all have that choice that we can make it. Every one of us. There is no exception. In schools, at home, on the street, or at work. Because good leadership will prevail. You get a lot more out of kindness, being a good leader at work. The workers appreciate it. Teachers in classrooms to make sure if you recognize a friend, a classmate that's a good leader, follow them, but don't follow a bully. And this is the challenge, my friend. Now I'm going to leave the floor to you. If you have any questions, please speak up because I'm hard of hearing from typhoid fever, as I mentioned in the beginning, but you have a good voice. So if anyone has a question, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eva, for sharing your story with us, for pouring out your heart into this conference. And we do know that it is painful and really hard to remember all these things. So on behalf of the Student Council, I want to give you thanks for sharing what you have and your powerful story, because just as you were saying, we have to be leaders. And this is a spectacular way of leadership that is touching many hearts of all the people that's joining us tonight or that will see this testimony of yours. So thank you very much for this space and for everything that you do. And oh well, so yes, we do have some questions in our chat. So the first one is, well, Clau Orozco says, Eva, thank you very much for your testimony. May God bless you now and forever. Are you familiar with the Montessori method of peace? If so, what do you think of it?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the last part.
If you are familiar with Montessori method of peace, if so, what do you think of it, of this method?
Of peace?
Yes, Montessori has a method of peace. If you are
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So we can go to the next question. Okay.
Okay, we have another question. How to give a life meaning in the middle of all the suffering?
Can you repeat the other one? The other hostess? Yeah.
How to give a life meaning in the middle of all the suffering?
How do I get through all this suffering?
Yeah, the meaning that you can give to the suffering.
Well, you have to think about your family. Yes, I have to do what I have to do because of my family that are not here with me anymore.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eva. Is it possible to give life a meaning in the middle of all the chaos and all of the dehumanization that was going on?
Yes, there is. You have to make a choice. You have to realize, in my case particularly, I was given a gift of life. And I have responsibilities to give back to the community. Otherwise, my family died in vain. If I sit just in a rocking chair and do nothing, I have to give meaning to it. I had a family once. I knew what it was like to have a family, but I also know what it's like not to have one and what happened to them.
Thank you so much. We have another question. How can we speak against all the mother genocides, like abortions, so we can be more conscious about it? Maybe we're not living in any Holocaust, but we are living modern Holocausts, that there's
Yes.
many violence. So how can we speak about it, and how can we become more conscious about all this?
You have to make a choice and not to be a bystander. You have to speak about it wherever you are, in your community, in your organization. You have to speak about it. You have to acknowledge it.
Great, thank you. We have another question in the chat. It says, Eva, did you ever forgive the Nazis?
Okay, there are two sides to forgiveness. I want him to understand that. I have forgiven for what they did to me. Morally and historically, I do not have the right to forgive what they did to 11 million people. I don't have the right to do that. But for what they did to me, yes, because I needed to heal.
Thank you very much, Eva. We have another question. How can you identify, like, right away a bad leader? How to know when somebody is not going to be a good leader?
By their behavior. By
Thank
their
you.
behavior.
Okay. Like, they're asking us for concrete actions to promote peace. What can we do to promote peace?
What can you do to promote peace? To be part of being who you are, not allowing bad words to go on in your area, in your world, in your home, at work, not to be a bystander. You can't attack people, but you can say, hey, you have some issues, let's sit down and talk about it. Dialogue.
And finally, so we can end up with this questions and answers space, is there something you could say to all the youth in order to, like, what would you want to tell to all these young people that are watching us right now or that will watch us in the future? What would be your final message to them? Yes.
Okay. You have to know, first of all, you must know who you are. When you know who you are, you can love yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, you can't love anyone else either. It starts with the self, not with you or him. And to realize that life is not about the capital I, or me. Life, you know what life is about? Me. Acceptance. There are issues. We cannot resolve issues with anger or hate. Let's sit down and talk about it. That works.
Well, thank you, Eva, for this round of questions and answers. We really appreciate your testimony. Thank you for everything that you have left us today. It's a treasure for humanity. It's a treasure for all of us that we have shared this space so we can actually make a reflection about how we are living and which is the world that we want to build, us, the new generations, and those who are to come.
Right, because there is what we do today will affect us tomorrow. Right?
Yeah, that's the truth. So thank you.
It's all about human behavior, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being our grand finale. And we can have you. So finally, the Student Council of the Bachelor of Family Studies and Human and Family Development of the Pontificio Theological Institute, John Paul II, thanks Dr. Eva Olsson for her intervention with the conference Eliminating Hate, The Road to Peace in the Family Week, edition 2021, Person All, and for her commitment in discovering, deepening, and sharing the beauty of the person. So thank you so, so much, Dr. Eva.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And finally, bye.
Bye.
Thank you. And finally, we are having our final words with Jimena.
Muchas gracias. En person all, la persona desde el todo. Después de un arduo esfuerzo académico por tratar de entender a la persona desde todas sus dimensiones, desde la dimensión biológica, desde la dimensión sexual, psicológica, espiritual, y finalmente hoy con la dimensión social, podemos concluir que la persona es una realidad mucho más compleja de lo que a veces se presenta, pero es infinitamente digna, infinitamente valiosa y debe estar en el centro de toda actividad humana. Vuelvo a reiterar con firmeza la propuesta que Carol Wojtyla hace sobre construir una civilización del amor. El amor no como un cliché de sentimentalismo sin fundamento, sino como una realidad de cambio, como un llamado a la acción, como algo a lo que todos deberíamos de comprometernos. Vivimos en un mundo en donde se nos olvida cómo ser humanos, o quizá cómo ser más humanos. Explicar a la persona es verla desde el todo que ella es. Y después de haberla abordado en todas sus dimensiones, vemos que el ser humano tiene un llamado a la trascendencia, un llamado al que debe responder. Y una llamada a todos los jóvenes que están allá afuera, que están viendo, a todas las personas que recibirán esta transmisión. No tengamos miedo, como decía nuestro fundador del instituto, no tengamos miedo a responder a ese llamado que se nos ha hecho, que se nos ha inscrito en el corazón y que no nos dejará en paz hasta que lo completemos, porque en ese llamado está nuestra felicidad y nuestra plenitud. Agradecemos una vez más a nuestro patrocinador oficial, la Fundación Roche Friends, por hacer posible este evento. Agradecemos a Antorchas Vivas, la empresa que nos hizo posibles estas transmisiones. También queremos dar las gracias a los monasterios de las Carmelitas Descalzas de Tlalpan y a las hermanas de Clarisas de Morelia, que sostuvieron con oraciones este evento. Finalmente, a todos los institutos y a las asociaciones que nos ayudaron con la promoción, al Insight Institute, con participación, Jubi, Rema, Vértice, Un Corazón que Arde, Red de Colaboradores del Reino Christi, Familiogando, Instituto de Análisis y Política Familiar, Formar Apóstoles, y sobre todo al Instituto Pontificio Juan Pablo II, en sus sedes de Monterrey, Guadalajara, Valencia, España y sobre todo México. Muchas gracias a todas las personas que siguieron muy de cerca este evento y las que van a recibir estas transmisiones por acompañarnos y por ser parte de nuestra tan esperada Semana de la Familia Person All. A nombre de la Sociedad de Alumnos de la carrera de Ciencias de la Familia y Desarrollo Humano y Familiar, les damos las gracias.
Finalmente, les recordamos que nos pueden seguir en nuestras redes sociales en ciencias.familia en Instagram y también nos pueden seguir aquí mismo en el Instituto Juan Pablo II, la sede de México, para que se puedan enterar de más eventos como este. E igual les vamos a estar dejando en el transcurso de esta semana que viene una liga para que nos ayuden conociendo sus comentarios, sus sugerencias y su opinión sobre este magno evento. Muchas gracias de nuevo a todos y que tengan muy bonito fin de semana.